Hey, welcome back to iconic Ann Arbor, to the tour of Ann Arbor. Actually, I say that, but there's so many aspects to this incredibly beautiful, interesting community that these 65 plus photographs and location descriptions don't do it justice. It's just a thumbnail of all of the treasures that are here. But let's continue with our tour. So let's take a look at the Forest Hill Cemetery. The cemetery is located at 415 South Observatory, and it was built over a period of years, beginning in 1858 and then continuing 1867 until it was completed. This is a very special place. It's very tranquil. It is not what you think of when you think in terms of a cemetery, and that was by design. So some background information on this beautiful, interesting, meaningful location is that in 1856, a cemetery company was formed to choose a site for a new cemetery in Ann Arbor. The cemetery, which is now Fletch Park, which is, if you look at the power center, it's the grounds on the power center. But it was too small at that time. It was hemmed in by the expanding town and community. So after offering $50 for the best plan, the company chose a hilly part of the town south of the observatory, known as the Taylor Farm, to construct a new type of cemetery, no longer consisting of rows of tombstones next to the church. The new approach called for a scenic setting reflecting the peacefulness and repose of death. In the 1850s, this new view of cemeteries saw them as places for contemplation. In fact, the movement toward the creation of public parks began in the picturesque or romantic cemetery movement. The cemetery's cut fieldstone gatehouse and sexton's house are designated historic by the Ann Arbor Historic District Commission. So James Morwick built the Gothic stone entrance, and the gateway bell was originally rung for funerals. The stone house and office were added in 1874, designed by Gordon Lloyd, an architect of English origin, who was the preeminent architect of Gothic revival churches and cathedrals in the Midwest in the 1860s and 1870s. Lloyd was the architect of St. Andrew's Episcopal Church, the oldest church in Ann Arbor that will be featured a little later on in this series, as well as the Congregational Church of Ann Arbor and the Central United Methodist Church. Both of those churches will also be featured in this video series, and the David Whitney House, which is currently the Whitney Restaurant in Detroit. Many leading citizens of Ann Arbor and distinguished members of the university community are laid to rest in Forest Hills. The first permanent interment was Benijah Tinknor. Around 1858 is when he died. The U.S. naval surgeon, originally from Connecticut, who built the cobblestone farmhouse, which will also be featured in this video series and in the book. The families of Ann Arbor founder John Allen and co-founder Elijah Walker Rumsey are also buried there. So is Michigan's first state Supreme Court Justice, William Asa Fletcher. So just to walk through this place, when I was a graduate student, sometimes in between classes, often following classes, or when I just wanted to stop and think and rest, I would walk through the cemetery. Now that seems kind of strange unless you've been there, and I'd often pause, sit down with one of the residents of the cemetery and just rest and kind of reflect on the day before continuing on as a student, or even my days as a lecturer at the University of Michigan. So it's a pretty magnificent place, and I recommend that you go there sooner than later, so to speak. So anyhow, one of the things that I always do, as I mentioned before, is I've asked for comments and memories of the different locations that are featured in the series. Here are a couple of the comments. My dad's maternal grandparents, great-grandparents, two of his mother's siblings are buried there. It's a beautiful and peaceful cemetery. Another comment, so many Ann Arborites from long ago living there. An interesting use of the term living. I actually do understand that. It's fun to walk through and read the markers. And then somebody had to say it. I hear people are dying to get in there. This person attributed that to their dad who said that. That really is kind of a dad comment. Another person, I have been a few times while standing at my mom's grave just before sunset. A group of deer would approach, one doe coming within 1 foot of me. So beautiful. I liked thinking she was the spirit of my mom. I think that's beautiful. But that gives you a sense of the tranquility of this place. Again, let's give some perspective. So this was being created in Ann Arbor way back in 1858. What was happening in the world? Well, this quote from a very famous president, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." This is Abraham Lincoln, June 16th, 1858. This was the year that Minnesota became the 32nd state admitted to the Union. Charles Darwin, somebody close to my heart, having traveled to the Galapagos Islands as a photographer with the National Geographic. It is pretty amazing. Anyhow, this is when Charles Darwin first goes public on his views of evolution. Lincoln also in that same year in a debate with Stephen Douglas declares that slavery is a moral wrong. It's interesting that we have to have somebody declare that, and we're still dealing with those issues today. And one of my favorite presidents, particularly being a person who loves the national parks and loves being outdoors, this is the year that Teddy Roosevelt was born. So I encourage you to, as I said, visit the cemetery. It is a lovely place. It certainly is iconic, and it is very representative of what Ann Arbor did as a leader in so many ways throughout the country. So thank you for visiting, and stay tuned.